Choosing to come here this morning. I'll start with a little bit of orientation in terms of who I am and that context. As you can see on the slide, I'm head of research, enterprise, and scholarly communication. This was a team that was established in the library in 2009 as part of an organizational renewal process, and we were designed to engage with the research work of the campus. So traditionally, the library is more involved with teaching and learning. But our team was established to work with researchers. Some of the main areas that we work in is research data management. We have a data repository where we archive and publish research data. We assist researchers, faculty primarily in terms of publishing, and we also have a virtual research environment for research teams to share documents and collaborate and that sort of thing. Another thing I wanted to say in terms of context is the library and CCS, which is a central computing, both reside under the Chief Information Officer, and we work very closely with CCS. We also work very closely with the Office of Research. So we've established what we call the E-Research Support Steering Committee, which is sort of a high-level strategic group that brings together the library, CCS, and the Office of Research to coordinate support to research on campus. So in terms of the topic that I'll be talking about, traditionally we provide lots of support to researchers on campus, but most or many researchers engage to some extent in field research, and when they head out on field research, we quite literally leave them to their own devices. So there's a great potential, I think, for use of mobile technologies when researchers are out in the field, and there's various ways that we can support and facilitate that work. So here's an overview of what I'll be talking about. A little bit of a sort of a literature review on this area. I've been conducting researcher interviews and also planned to shadow researchers when they're out in the field to look at some of the issues and potential solutions, and then some service strategies. So in terms of the literature review, you'll see that there are here just some sample titles of articles dealing with this area of mobile phone as a tool for data collection and field research. A lot of it is focused on the actual data collection. I wanted to focus for now in particular on a report from the World Bank from February of 2011 titled "Cutting Costs, Boosting Quality, and Collecting Data Real Time, Lessons from a Cell Phone-Based Beneficiary Survey to Strengthen Guatemala's Conditional Cash Transfer Program." So I'll revisit this again a little bit later, but for now there's a lot of work that's been done in terms of mobile technologies and cell phones in particular, in terms of dissemination of information, whether that's in developing countries or elsewhere. And emerging is a lot more attention in terms of data collection using cell phone technology. While research to evaluate these mobile interventions has been growing, there are relatively few studies on the use of mobile technology itself as a research instrument in developing countries. Mobile data collection projects to capture outcomes are abundant, but there are far fewer large-scale and complex surveys using mobile phones. The potential mobile phones hold in this regard is striking. Compared to a traditional process using paper and pencil forms with later transcription to a computer system, mobile devices offer immediate digitization and transmission of collected data at the point of survey, followed by automated data aggregation. As such, mobile phones promise faster, more cost-effective, and more accurate surveys. Most notably, the cost savings resulting from immediate digitization and transmission of collected data with subsequent automated data aggregation offset by far the purchasing and data transmission costs of mobile phones. So in terms of my work with researchers, as I say, I've been conducting interviews with them, and I will be shadowing them when they're working out in the field to get firsthand experience. What I'm covering in the interviews is to get a sense of what their field environment, what their experience in the field is all about, what their current data collection practices are, how they store data when they're away from campus, what use currently they may be making of mobile devices, and then what they do with their data when they return to campus. So I'm going to go through 4 researchers that I've interviewed to date and just give you a little bit of a sense of what they're about. Researcher number 1 is an entomologist who works quite a range of research projects that he's involved with, both in terms of subject matter and geographic location. He works with tree mapping and conducting an ash borer census. He's looking at beetle habitat and what affects their decision making to establish in certain environments. He's conducting a butterfly census in northern Canada, and he's working with honeybees in Vietnam. In terms of his current practice, he records on paper and then transfers when he's back on campus into a spreadsheet. He uses GPS coordinates, but even those, he transcribes the GPS coordinates in pencil and paper for later transcription. There's always, one of the themes you'll hear about is the errors that creep in when you're capturing stuff in paper and then transcribing it in digital form. Some of these GPS errors are obvious. For example, he was using GPS coordinates to map where trees are located, and he found that trees were being located in the middle of Lake Erie, so it was clear that there were some errors creeping into the transcription there. He also does GPS mapping of routes and butterfly locations and maps those into Google Earth. He's also collecting samples when he's out in the field, particularly butterflies for DNA sequencing. And when he's in Vietnam, he's videotaping bee colonies for later analysis. Researcher number 2 is a political science researcher who's working with indigenous peoples in Latin America and looking at basically testing the concept of information is power. He's looking at how disadvantaged and marginalized groups can use information to improve their position and fight for expanded political and social rights. He's essentially conducting interviews and administering surveys. So he does semi-structured interviews for both quantitative and qualitative data. He does audio recordings of those interviews, and because of his particular agreement with the Research Ethics Board, he has been required to transcribe those interviews and then destroy the original audio interviews. So he's basically interviewing during the day and then transcribing in the evening. He would have preferred to retain the audio recordings, but wasn't permitted to do so by the Research Ethics Board. So he's also conducting paper surveys where he distributes surveys and collects them. He's also collecting documents from indigenous groups in terms of administrative records and so on for further analysis. Some of his concerns when he's traveling all over Latin America and the inconvenience of transporting all these paper records, he categorizes them as essential and non-essential, and then the essential ones he keeps with his person at all times, and the others he puts in his luggage where there's more risk of loss. So there's some vulnerability to these paper records. Also complications when he's crossing from one country into another and he's taking all these paper documents with him in terms of immigration officials questioning what he's up to. One of his concerns in terms of use of mobile technologies is reinforcing the power disparity between the North and the South. And yet most indigenous, even quite poor people in Latin America as well as other developing countries do use mobile phones quite commonly. Researcher number 3 is a horticulturalist working in tomato breeding. His practice is he walks up and down his rows of tomato plants, recording observations. Basically what he does is prints out a spreadsheet and then records with a pencil on that spreadsheet data and observations, and then later transcribes it back into a digital spreadsheet, and that he retains the paper as well as the digital form. He makes observations on individual plants as well as more general observations. He does cassette recording of comments. And one of the concerns he has when he's out working in the field is just the amount of stuff that he has to take with him. So he's got wire flags for marking plants. He's got a knife. He's got a paper notebook and pencil. He's got an audio recorder as well as a camera for taking pictures. He said he actually wears a carpenter's belt just to keep all this stuff with him when he's out walking in the field. And finally, the fourth researcher that I interviewed is a researcher working on farmer training via video in Bangladesh. He's looking at how farmers can share local innovations with each other, and basically looking at video as a means to do that, and the difference between video that is created by the farmers themselves versus professionally produced video, and the efficacy of the two approaches. So he does, again, paper surveys. He is concerned about losing data, and he has piles and piles of paper surveys that could easily be lost or put out of sequence. The surveys are transferred to Excel. He tried scanning the paper surveys, but his equipment wasn't up to the task. There's also group discussions where he's taking notes and audio recordings of those group discussions, participant observation. So in terms of one of the other common themes we hear is there's survey data, audio recordings, notes and observations, and how do you tie all these things together in paper records. And then again, for storage, he uses an external hard drive when he's out in the field. So just in summary, some of the current practice that we're observing, handwritten data that needs to be transcribed. So errors creeping in during that process, as well as essentially double entry being done first paper and pencil and then into the computer. There's a need for a digital alternative to paper notebooks and paper surveys, automatic capturing of GPS coordinates, safe storage of data, photos, audio, videos, drawings, and then linking all these disparate elements together. So for example, for a particular subject, you've got links that are established between the photos, the data, the audio, and so on. Also, the ability for multiple members of a research team to collaborate and update data, and something that will accommodate extensive note-taking. So some of the issues that I'm going to move on to look at are the mobile devices themselves, data collection using mobile devices, data storage when researchers are out in the field, a little bit of a look at electronic laboratory notebooks, and then accessing data from campus while out in the field. So in terms of the devices, one of the themes is protecting your device from physical damage, theft and loss, protecting your identity, and protecting the data that's on your device. And just again, a little bit of the context. In working on this research, I'm testing solutions as well, and my options for testing are an iPad and a BlackBerry Z10. So that in itself imposes limitations on the variety of things that can be tested. In terms of, so physical damage is one of the concerns. Researcher number 3, the researcher who works with tomato breeding, talked about working in damp, hot, and/or dusty conditions, and also desiring something that was lightweight. So there's a plethora of options in terms of protective covers for smartphones and tablets. But the more bulk they have, obviously, the more you're countering the advantage of having a mobile device in the first place. One example just of many, is an iPhone cover called the Griffin Survivor that sells for about $50 and claims to have a military rating to survive shock and drop, wind and rain, vibration, sand and dust. In terms of security from theft, researcher number 2, who is the political scientist in Latin America, he talked about concerns both about his device and personal safety working in high crime areas, particularly in Venezuela. So what he did, he had a BlackBerry that he left at home because he felt he and his device would be vulnerable, and he traveled with a very cheap cell phone for those reasons. So one of the concerns in terms of losing a device is ensuring that the researcher can, many smartphones have a feature that allows you to track through GPS coordinates where your device is. So that sort of feature can be advantageous. Protecting your identity. Again, researchers need advice on best practices, use of passwords to lock the device. Again, many feature the feature where if you try to log in several times with failed authentication, it'll wipe out all the data on your device. Encouragement not to reuse the same passwords over and over, and potentially to use password managers for your mobile devices. Protecting data, encryption being one of the main areas where researchers would need, again, advice. Whether the data is being stored on the device itself or in the cloud, they need to look at encryption. Again, various options including whole disk encryption, virtual disk encryption, folder directory encryption, device encryption, enterprise encryption. It can be very daunting for researchers who don't have a lot of familiarity. So now we'll look at data collection. First, I want to talk a little bit about an inventory that I found that seems quite useful. Data collection using mobile apps, data collection by accessing web forms, and data collection by SMS. So this is an inventory of, as you can see, mobile phone-based data collection projects. The use of mobile phones for quick-time data collection is proliferating around the world. To get a better understanding of the scale and scope of these new data collection efforts, the Global Pulse Initiative partnered with mobileactive.org, a global network of people using mobile technology for social change, to conduct a survey of present and planned mobile data collection efforts. Data collection via apps. It's, I think, safe to assume that we're not going to be able to custom design apps for individual research projects, but there are a number of services that make it quite easy for end users to develop and deploy their own apps. So I'm going to look at some of these. One of them is called Magpie. Typical of these types of services, you can create forms on a website, deploy those to the smartphone, usually using some kind of subscription service so that the smartphone subscribes to the app and then automatically receives updates. The website itself collects the data, offers real-time visualization, offers the capability to export to Access or Excel, offers encryption of survey data. Also, in cases where there may be connectivity problems, the smartphone can store data, say for example a survey response, and keep it on the phone until a connection is established, and then upload, sort of a bulk upload to the website of any surveys that have been stored there. Magpie includes the option of SMS data entry as well. Magpie is available for iPhone, Android, and Symbian, but not BlackBerry or iPad. So I wasn't to date I haven't been able to test with Magpie. It's available free for up to 20 forms by 100 questions by 500 records, and then there's an open API for the enterprise version, You also have the option of storing the data on the campus servers as opposed to using the hosted solution. Magpie references the World Bank report that I cited earlier, and showed that they documented a 71% decrease in data collection costs compared with paper, as well as improved quality. The 2010 country governance and anti-corruption funded pilot in Guatemala employed entry-level mobile phones in conjunction with EpiSurveyor. EpiSurveyor is actually the former name of Magpie. A free web-based software for data collection to drastically reduce cost, facilitate accuracy, and accelerate implementation of a nationally representative beneficiary survey of Guatemala's conditional cash transfer program. As such, it illustrates the potential of mobile phone-based data collection to strengthen program monitoring, evaluation, and implementation, in particular in remote and marginalized areas highly populated by indigenous peoples. Another service in this area is the Open Data Kit. It's an open source suite of tools that helps organizations author, field, and manage mobile data collection solutions. So ODK provides an out-of-the-box solution for users to build a data collection form or survey, collect the data on a mobile device, and send it to a server, again, available only for Android phones. It can collect text, GPS location, photos, video, audio, and barcodes, and then aggregate the collected data on a server and extract it in useful formats. Essentially stored. You can also store the data in local MySQL or PostgreSQL databases. The core developers of Open Data Kit are at the University of Washington. Another one we'll briefly look at is the SMAP suite from the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. It makes use of the ODK toolkit and is focused on surveys incorporating geospatial data, mostly written in JavaScript. Another one that I've looked at quite closely is something called Do Forms. Again, researcher number 3 talked about needing to associate record entries with GPS coordinates, audio comments, photos, drawings, and so on. Do Forms is excellent for this type of thing. Within an individual record, you can embed photographs, audio recordings, you can draw on top of the photographs and save them all within the same data record. Again, it works even when not connected for later updating to the server. Do Forms is largely targeted at private industry, but I still see a lot of relevance for our context. One of the things they have is dispatch functionality. So for example, a firm that has workers out at various locations, you can send out work orders for them and then keep track of where they actually are using their GPS coordinates. And I see there's some potential for that to be used for research teams where there are members of the research teams dispersed and collecting data in various locations. Another one that I'll cite just very briefly is Form Hub. And again, with these graphics illustrates the common design principle that you design on the website, collect using the mobile phone, and then do data analysis again on the website. Apart from actual apps on the smartphones, there's data collection by web forms. Some of the advantages and disadvantages, it does require an active connection to reach the website. There's less functionality in terms of incorporating things like GPS coordinates, photos, voice recording, and so on. One advantage, however, is that it's cross-platform, so you're not constantly running into the problems of it works on one type of phone but not another. Another very intriguing approach to data collection in the field is through SMS. Again, SMS has been used very commonly to disseminate information, less commonly to actually collect data. One example is text to change. Data collection using mobile phones, the right tool for the job. Primarily, they're talking about SMS data collection. They're very active in Africa and South America. So they do two-way SMS, both dissemination and collecting of responses. They provide tools for data analysis and interpretation, as well as visualization and reporting. So a little bit of a recap on data collection using mobile technologies. This is a report I found evaluating the accuracy of data collection on mobile phones and comparing web forms, SMS, and voice. Their findings were that in terms of our results indicate error rates per datum entered of 4.2% for electronic forms, 4.5% for SMS, and 0.45% for voice. Those I don't think are terribly generalizable to other contexts, partly because this was research that was conducted in 2008, and a lot has changed since then. Also, the entry using these various options was done by respondents with limited cell phone familiarity and very little training. Another study that was cited found error rates under 2% when respondents had at least 1 hour of training. So another area is storage when researchers are away from campus, where there are, again, a plethora of options in terms of storing in the cloud, and that's where researchers are going to look for advice in terms of which option is recommended, in terms of ease of use to download, upload, and sync with the home environment. The ability to view multiple formats, whether you've got Microsoft Office products, spreadsheets, or databases that are viewable on the mobile technology from the cloud, the cost, and of course security. Another option is to store back on the university servers, either by FTP, there's one example there of FTP on the go, or on enterprise platforms back at the home campus. So for example, the researcher who's working in Latin America, he actually stores his, once he's transcribed the audio interviews, he stores those transcriptions in a SharePoint site back on our home campus. So that kind of thing is an option. Some of the tools, iTransfer can manage both FTP as well as cloud storage. FTP on the go is available for iPhone and iPad. One of the features of FTP on the go is that data that's actually stored on your phone can be accessed from any computer with a web browser. It has technology called Smart Replace, which will not break your existing files if a phone call or lost connection interrupts the upload, and it also features compression on the fly. Then I wanted to talk just a little bit about electronic laboratory notebooks, and I wanted to do a little bit of an impromptu poll. How many people are aware of ELNs being used on your campus at all? No? How many people are familiar with ELNs? Okay, so ELNs are fairly common in commercial labs and emerging more and more in the academic environment. The University of Wisconsin at Madison conducted a study on electronic lab notebooks. They looked at a wide range of needs depending on different disciplines. So they needed an ELN that was going to be easily customizable. Again, paper recording is time consuming. The inability to associate digital contents is a problem. Once the data is digital, it enables sharing and collaboration, as well as facilitating data management, so adhering to data management policies, either from the local institution or from the research funder. So they worked with 55 researchers, participated in a 3-month pilot study of ELNs. By the end of that study, 91% wanted to continue using the ELN. And based on this high level of interest, they're planning an enterprise implementation of, again, ECAT. A lot of these products are quite young and evolving, and part of that is changing names on a regular basis. ECAT is now known as RSpace, or at least will be with the upcoming release. So University of Wisconsin-Madison has committed to an enterprise implementation of the ECAT ELN. Some of the features that were most valued by their researchers during the study, incorporating, managing, and archiving data files, versioning of data files, searchability, remote access, and collaboration. They did comment that they were disappointed with use of the ELNs on mobile technology, using mobile devices. So that's one of the reasons I'm bringing this into the discussion, is because ECAT in their new version, RSpace, is really focused on enhancing support for use with mobile devices. I'm actually working with them to test the beta release of RSpace using mobile devices. So again, you can supplement notes with images, drawings, video, spreadsheets using simple drag and drop technology. There are sketching tools, drawing over images. There's a Chem Doodle utility to capture chemical structures, ample capacity for commenting, linking between documents, features for managing samples and associating samples with particular experiments. There's a good integration of research team communication so that you can do sort of workflows and updating within a research team. You can design custom forms and templates to be used. The versioning of data sets, you can view and restore earlier versions of data as it's going through various analysis or cleanup. And then a brief reference to Neurosciency, which is another ELN product that is quite interesting. It has a module called Freezer Pro for sample management and Easy Colony for animal management. It has full iPad support and has they've packaged it as a virtual appliance for quick deployment into enterprise IT infrastructure. Just a brief reference to, again, accessing data from the home server. And then I just wanted to end with looking at some of the strategies, like what does all of this mean in terms of the work that we're doing. So these are 3 areas that I've identified in terms of support strategies. One is just to develop a knowledge base of tools and best practices to help assist researchers in making appropriate decisions when they're designing a research project that involves field research. A possible component of that would be user support. As we become familiar with these tools, we can offer support to the researchers. Develop project-specific solutions. Again, we don't want to be looking at hiring developers for individual research projects, but a lot of these tools are very end-user friendly and makes it very quick and easy and inexpensive to develop a smartphone app for deployment. And finally, looking at potentially enterprise solutions in this area. So that's the end of it. This is sort of early stages of a longer term look that I'm doing at mobile technologies. As I say, I'm going to be working with additional researchers in other disciplines and shadowing researchers in various contexts. And while I'm shadowing them, I'll be testing some of these technologies and tools to see how effective they might be. So any comments or questions?
Question on that live Q&A. ELNs tailored only to hard sciences.
Is that a question or is it?
I'm guessing, yeah, somebody wants to know if the ELNs are tailored only to the hard sciences or are they available for anyone?
Well, yeah, there are ELNs that are really geared towards specific sciences. For example, chemistry. There are ELNs that are really geared towards chemistry. When Madison, Wisconsin was doing their study, they actually tested 2 ELNs and they had a range of, I think, 7 or 8 different, what we would call colleges, in terms of how effectively it could be tailored to the needs of different disciplines. So yes, there are some ELNs that are really targeted to hard science, but I think there are applications for virtually any kind of research that collects data. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, absolutely. The tomato breeder was particularly concerned about using cloud services because he didn't want to be storing data in the States, especially with the legislation in the United States that can expose data. So it's one reason why looking at campus options or even campus cloud storage might be more attractive. Or consortial solutions. For example, how many people here are from Ontario? Okay, so I don't know if you're familiar with Scholars Portal, but Scholars Portal does a lot of work with Ontario University libraries, and one of the things they have is a consortial data repository. So options like that might be a good alternative to some of the commercial cloud services. Any other comments or questions?
About the security issues through the mobile system all the way back to the...
Definitely a concern. Yeah, and I think, you know, for myself, I need to learn more about that. I don't know that much about it at this point, but I think, again, that's an area where we need to advise researchers on best practices.
So, curious about the relationship that you have with CSS, the IT group, I think that's what
CCS.
CCS. Do you find that your role is more around data management, requirements gathering, knowledge, and then the partnering with the IT department on the technology solutions, or are you feeling that gap, if there's one that exists, to say, we don't have these technology solutions right now, you're looking at all these different solutions and making recommendations to perhaps the sector IT to see if these are sustainable solutions that can develop in-house? Is that the kind of role that you're right now?
Well, a very interesting question, and that's, I think the main area that I would address is the research data management, whether it's mobile technologies or not. It's something that has really been championed by academic libraries as opposed to the IT end of things. And it's really why we created this group that I talked about, bringing the library, CCS, and the Office of Research together. The library generally has had historically more of a focus on issues like preservation and archiving, as well as publishing and sharing of information. So I think those are some of the reasons why the library has really taken on the mandate of research data management. Also the fact that metadata is an area of sort of specialization for libraries, and metadata is huge in research data management, documenting the methodologies used and all that sort of thing, so that data, not only is it preserved and published, but once somebody finds it, they'll know how to interpret it. So again, a strong role for the library, but an obvious role for IT as well. So we're working with CCS to coordinate solutions. Currently, our data repository is through Scholars Portal, so we're not even using our own IT capacity for that. But the other area of work in terms of research data management is recognition at the institutional level. A lot of individual researchers, especially when you approach them and talk to them about properly managing their research data, storing it for, archiving it for future use, publishing it so it's discoverable by other researchers. They're very keen on those ideas. But I think until it gets formally endorsed by the institution, it's going to be a lot of work doing sort of one-on-one sales pitches. So there are a lot of institutions, especially in the States, that have policies or mandates for research data management. And so we're looking at elevating the conversation to that level. And that's where having the Office of Research as part of the conversation is really valuable.
Have you been looking exclusively at phones, tablets, or other devices like smartphones?
To date, that's pretty much it. It's interesting when I'm talking to researchers what people think of when you think of mobile technologies. Like some people don't even think of a cell phone as a mobile technology. One of the researchers, the one who does work with bees in Vietnam, he has a little device that all it does is periodically sends an email to a target email address telling the recipient where he's located. So he uses that just so his wife knows where he is. But he said it's a very expensive service. So there's different bits and pieces of technology, but for the most part, I've been focused on smartphones and tablets. Well, thanks again for coming. How was the timing?
You got another minute or two if you wanted to say anything.
Oh, no,
else, but-
I was